Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about The Perfect Find. The Perfect Find is an American romantic comedy that tells the story of Jenna Jones, a fashion designer who finds herself starting her career over from scratch following a nasty breakup. She begs for a job at a company operated by her frenemy Darcy, which she accepts and shortly after meets her son Eric. The two hit things off immediately, but Jenna doesn't realize Eric is Darcy's son until after their first romantic encounter. From there, the two try to keep their romance under wraps, as Jenna must ask herself if she's willing to risk her big career comeback and continue pursuing her feelings for Eric. This is yet another average rom-com that's pretty much par for the course for Netflix these days. It does tell its story in interesting ways, largely due to its age gap concept, but in the end it remains the same tropey bog-standard love story as always, one with an equal number of both good and bad things about it that prevent it from standing out. The main character Jenna Jones, played by Gabrielle Union, is an okay protagonist, though not much different from others from the same genre. She has a hard time starting over following the end of her relationship and losing her job, so she is relatable to a basic degree, but not much more beyond that. There's not a lot else to say about her, which is disappointing because there is potential behind her character. I like the fact that she's an older woman who still doesn't have everything in her life figured out yet, so it's frustrating to see this potential get thrown away just so she can go through almost the exact same story beats as any other female love interest. I did find myself enjoying the male lead Eric a bit more by comparison. His interest in filmmaking, his relationship with his mother, and backstory involving his father all flesh him out enough to make him a well-rounded character, even if he is still fairly ordinary by rom-com standards. His casual sense of humor and lightheartedness also helped make the story feel more light and breezy, whereas scenes with Jenna often tended to be more serious in nature, which I feel goes against the tone of what a rom-com should go for. Again, not an amazing character, but he still lends a sense of fun to the story, which I appreciate. As with many other Netflix rom-coms, the relationship between these two characters is hit and miss. The main gimmick behind these two is that there's an age gap between them, in which Jenna is 40 years old and Eric is 22 years old, which leaves 18 years between them, and this is explored in various ways that are both good and bad. For starters, I like how the movie treats their relationship with respect and doesn't make it out to be some kind of joke. Of course, the two do occasionally have fun at each other's expense, but it never comes off as mean-spirited, and their love for each other feels genuine. Additionally, I like that the movie doesn't waste time in setting up the dynamics between the two. They are immediately attracted to each other, so the movie isn't so much about the two gradually falling in love as it is about them exploring what they already have. And with the forces pitted against them, this makes it a bit easier to become invested in them and see how they will figure things out. This being said, the relationship isn't without flaws either. Both of them are interested in things with vintage qualities like old movies and music, and it's nice that they have something in common, but I feel like the movie tries too hard at times to drive the point home that Jenna is an older character. Even Jenna herself says at a certain point that just because she was born in the 70s, that doesn't mean she has to apply herself to the aesthetics of the era. This makes sense, so for me it's a bit confusing to see so much emphasis on old school materialism because it's not needed to add to or validate her relationship with Eric. When it comes down to it though, the movie just doesn't do much about the age gap aspect. It just feels like any other relationship from any other rom-com, which I suppose is the point to show how normal and even common age gap relationships are, but it's just a shame the movie barely does anything with its central premise and mostly avoids highlighting the generational differences between the characters. And I know I said earlier that the movie differs from other rom-coms with how they fall in love almost right away, but the romance still feels predictable. It becomes a Romeo and Juliet type of romance where their love is forbidden and they have to find ways to keep it a secret, and this comes with the usual set of problems that threaten to drive them apart. The biggest example in this regard is Eric's mother Darcy, who I'm a bit torn on. I love how much personality and presence that Gina Torres adds to her character, but sometimes it's too much. She has a lot of weird lines that confuse me on more than one occasion, and her role as the antagonist feels cliché in many respects. Both Jenna and Eric also have exes that come between them during the story, and it only happens once for both characters. I'm glad that their individual scenes were told from a more mature point of view, but they barely had any impact at all on the story with how lacking they were in execution, so they may as well just not have been there. Outside of the story, there are things it gets right and wrong with its atmosphere too. The movie takes good advantage of its fashion elements, with a variety of clothing and set designs that are accurate for Jenna's career trajectory, and although a bit tacky, they definitely add a sort of amusement factor to the story. There's a nice variety of scenery of the New York setting as well that adds to the romantic vibe of the story. The whole movie in general has this relaxed mood that makes it easy to focus on the romantic aspect of the story without getting too caught up in the more sillier scenes. However, one cannot watch the romance without watching the comedy, which leads me to talk about the other half of its genre identity as a rom-com. Much of the humor relies on slapstick situations that aren't really that funny, especially the scene that involved a guy grieving over his pet peacock. That was just pure cringe. Other times, the comedy hinges on the dialogue, which to be honest was pretty weak. It's fine when it's just focused on Jenna and Eric because their interactions are adorable, but when any other character's involved, it gets worse and even borderline weird. The movie features a lot of English-speaking characters saying lines in Spanish, and I'm still not sure what the point of it is. Even outside the comedy, the movie is so heavy with dialogue that some scenes just drag on and on and on. The final act is especially guilty of this, as it crams in a ton of exposition and a last-minute twist that overcomplicates the story and hurts its effectiveness in portraying the divide between both characters' ages. Now, the movie still does a decent job at validating age gap relationships, and it does have some neat takeaways with its message on promoting love in this respect, but it doesn't capitalize on this as much as it could have, and the uneven focus toward the bad comedy doesn't help with this either. Overall, The Perfect Find is in fact an average one that fails to stand out from the crowd of many other rom-coms like it. If you like rom-coms and want to watch one with a basic view of an age gap relationship, you might enjoy checking this out. I appreciate the fact that a movie like this exists to destigmatize age gap relationships, but the movie needs to do more than what it ultimately does. Its interesting ideas and relationship dynamic get bogged down by rote conventions and unfunny comedy that make it far from being perfect. What did you think about this movie? Did you appreciate what it had to say about age gap relationships, or were you also disappointed by it? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of The Perfect Find. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part where next time I review the Australian horror movie Run Rabbit Run. Bye bye!